Hi everybody, it's Marcy, and I want to talk to you guys about life after death. And I've been seeing all the past 3 weeks after my friend died at work of different people who died and come back to tell their story. And I just find it so bizarre within this amount of time that a lady that I worked with passed away, Carolyn, and within that amount of time, I keep seeing show after show after show on different channels at different times of the day about people who have died and come back to tell their story. And I feel like this is so important, and for some reason that I'm seeing them, and I need to tell you about them, because I think so many people, they say that they believe, but to actually hear these people, and what's so interesting is the things that happen to them, there would be no way of them knowing what people's conversations were here on earth. They know what doctors are saying when they leave their body. One gal was in a terrible car accident that was 17 years old, and her family was going down the highway, and it was her mom and dad in the front seat, and her and her brother in the back, and there was a semi kind of close to them, and a lady goes to try to pass them. And another car's coming, so she eases back in, and she ends up clipping the back of their vehicle. They go underneath of the semi, and everyone is miraculously okay except the 17-year-old daughter in the back seat. And it was really, really bad. She had head injuries. It had sliced all the way through her eye, and it was horrific. And they were airlifting her. They had to cut her out of the vehicle. And so it ended up, she told her story of how she had died and, left her body. All of them talk about actually visually seeing their body, and they're hovering above it. When they got her to the hospital, she flatlined. And her two grandmas and her mom and dad are out in the waiting room, and her dad is just so completely stressed out, and he talks about how he's got to go have a cigarette. And the two grandmas says, well, I think I'm going to have one too, and they didn't even smoke. And the girl tells them, after she actually dies and goes to heaven, and all the wonderful experiences, that she had there. And, what's so interesting is everyone always talks about how they see Jesus, how they see just the beauty of heaven, how just in awe they are, and how most generally every single person doesn't want to come back here. But she tells how, they send her back, and she said when she comes out of it, she tells her family of that conversation that they had out in the waiting room at the hospital that was far away from the surgery room that they had took her to. I mean, your soul leaves your body. And there's other people that have experienced going to hell, and that's terrifying. I mean, the reason why I feel like that I've seen all these shows the past few weeks is because I need to get through to somebody, and I don't want anybody to go there. I don't care if, say, someone murdered someone in their past, or whatever it might have been. I mean, something really, even more horrific than that, and that's pretty bad. But I do not want one single person to go there. I want everyone to repent and turn from what you're doing right now, and you're going to find that your walk with Jesus is awesome, and there's no other feeling like it. And so this one particular person that went to hell, I'll tell you one. My pawpaw knew of a man that was kind of a rounder back when my pawpaw would run and go to bars and all that. And he said that this man come out of the bar one night, and he got into a really big, hold on a second, I'm sorry, my dog's like up on my footstool here looking out the window, and he knows he's not supposed to be on there. Opie, get down. And he knew I was tied up and thought I wouldn't get on to him, but he was wrong. No, but anyhow, my pawpaw said this fellow is just a known rounder, and he hung out at the bar a lot. And he come out of there one night, and these couple guys had jumped him. They beat him up really bad. He ended up getting shoved down to the sidewalk and hit his head, and he come back from that experience. He was a totally different person. He didn't believe. He didn't follow any of what God was telling in the Bible. The man probably never picked up a Bible in his life to even see what kind of life he needed to be living. Well, when he ended up coming out of that, it scared him so bad what he went through by going to hell that my grandpa said he became a preacher. I mean, what is it? I mean, you can clearly see when a person actually changes, and for a person to come out of that and totally transform their life. I mean, this man wasn't even a believer. What would make him so desperate to reach people, to tell them to turn from what you're doing? And I feel like God gives people second chances, and those people he gives second chances that have experienced going to hell, he wants them to tell as many people as they possibly can. And that's why I want to tell as many people as I possibly can. We don't know when Jesus is going to return, but the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus. And I don't know what I can do or say, but I'll tell it till the day that I die. He is the only way to get to heaven. There's a book that I just started reading, and it's by Perry Stone, and he's on the Christian Channel, and I've only got to read one chapter that was in here that I was flipping through the other day, and this talks of another man that had experienced going to hell, and I'll read it to you here. Okay. Throughout my lengthy traveling ministry, I have personally met and spoken with individuals who encountered a brief afterlife experience. At times, the experience was At times, the experience was shortly after an accident or immediately after a major heart attack or some near-death experience. I will never forget a man that I met in 1978 who was attending my grandfather John Bava's church. He related a very eye-opening and frightening experience, which changed his life. Life-changing. I want to stop right there because I don't know how I can make you see a person that's a non-believer. What would they get out of coming back and going to churches and telling as many people as they can? It changed them because they truly went through a horrifying experience. There's nothing more horrifying than hell. I just am going to tell you, there's even people that had these near-death experiences. They went to church every week, but they weren't living a Christian life behind closed doors. Don't think that you're just going to slip in, you know. You got to do what he wants you to do. And because you love him, I don't do it because I'm thinking, like, you have to have a deep, deep love for God, and you want to do what's pleasing to him. Sorry. He experienced firsthand a journey into hell. I had just begun my traveling ministry and was conducting a revival at my granddad's church, the Church of God in Gorman, Maryland. During my first revival, I met and interviewed a man named Bill Fischel, who related a dramatic event that totally transformed his spiritual life. At the time of the incident, Bill was 41 years of age and working as a coal miner. On the morning of November 7, 1974, he was suddenly stricken with chest pains and began having difficulty breathing. He was immediately released from work and driven to the Garrett County Memorial Hospital in Oakland, Maryland, where he was admitted. The nurses began IVs, including morphine, to control the pain. The medical papers indicate a lidocaine drip was begun. While lying on the table in the emergency room, Bill suddenly blacked out. The attending doctor, Dr. Alvarez, contacted a Dr. Van Ormer in Cumberland, Maryland, to advise on the situation. The last thing Bill remembered was everything fading before his eyes. It was at this moment that Bill, what some would call an out-of-body experience, he heard voices in the hospital which seemed to slowly fade into the distance. Suddenly Bill's spirit and soul were fully alert, and he was aware he was moving rapidly into a dark tunnel, head first, going downward into the floor under the crust of the earth. He described this tunnel as very dreary and dark. His first question to himself were, "If I have died, then why am I not going up to heaven? Why am I going down?" As he continued his descent, spiraling downward, he observed a faint light at the end of the long tunnel. Suddenly he was enveloped in this light and found himself standing in a very large field with no grass or trees. The light, he would later learn, was coming from a large cavern somewhere in the earth. As he stood in his barren field, he described an intense heat that filled the atmosphere. The ground was desolate and hard. The air was very warm and uncomfortable to breathe. As he was wondering where he was, he noticed that people of various ages began to appear in the same field. Each bore an empty, blank expression on his or her face. I want to just say right here, you know, I know so many people that if you actually found yourself there, you would be so dumbfounded, like this says, the blank expressions on these people's face. Luckily, the story go on to tell that this man will get a second chance. Millions upon millions upon millions of people did not get a second chance, and they're there forever and ever. I mean, it says in the Bible that there's no quenching of thirst. It's horrible, and you know, I would not want my worst enemy to go there. So just please hear me out today. I hope this will change somebody's life to see that, man, I gotta change. And because, you know, so say you're like my friend that I worked with, I mean, I talked to her that Friday, and by that Wednesday she was gone. And she had Jesus, and I know she's in heaven. But listen, my dad, I mean, he was 24 years old. You do not know how long you have upon this earth. We could be gone tomorrow. Get saved right now. Don't do it like, oh, I'll do it sometime. Do it right now. Okay, let's see. No one was happy and no one was speaking to others. As this individual began appearing in this unknown region on the barren field, a crowd began forming and filling up with many people. Bill would later realize these were the souls and spirits of men and women from around the world who had just passed away on the earth and were all drawn to this area prior to their final confinement. At the moment Bill said the strangest thing occurred. In front of his group, in the distance, at the end of the field, stood what appeared to be a large, angelic creature. An announcement was shouted from this angel's mouth. If you are seeking rest and peace, come with me. Drawn like magnets to metal, the entire mass of people began moving slowly towards this supernatural being. Suddenly, it was as if a veil was lifted, and Bill began seeing these people falling headlong into a very large opening that is described as a massive pit, which if you read in a lot of the passages in the Bible, I mean, it somewhat like describes hell in this manner. It was then that he observed a second angelic-looking creature casting people into this immeasurable opening located somewhere under the earth. As Bill himself was being pulled towards the edge of this canyon, he estimated this gaping opening to be many miles in circumference. He could see into the lower area where the huge canyon contained thousands of smaller pits, all burning with fire. His ears were opened as he suddenly heard a mighty chorus of moans and cries arising from below, like millions of souls shouting in a large stadium. The voices were so many and diverse, both male and female. He observed that there were at least 2 people in each smaller pit. In some instances, a person would reach down into the fire and pull out a person and violently scream at the individual. There were older teenagers who were blaming their parents for being there. Bill heard one scream, "It's all your fault." And you know what? I hate to say this, but like, you know, we all have tragic things happen in life, and it's how you're going to deal with them. You can be mad and bitter and unforgiving, and you know, our God, Jesus, He can't forgive us if we can't forgive other people. So, I mean, people like to do the blame game, and maybe your circumstance, maybe it wasn't good. Maybe somebody really did you wrong, and I mean, I look at little kids who, you know, may have been beaten or molested their whole entire life, and for them to try to be a normal person, but through the grace of God, through Jesus, even that can be transformed into something good. You can go on to help millions of people, you know, just by, if you really want to, you can help millions. And I would love to help millions of people, but I'm starting out with you guys here. So, okay, where was I? Okay, he heard people saying, "It's all your fault," they're screaming. And one part of his experience that was completely unexpected was a smell coming from this area. Bill said there was a very depressing darkness far above the hole and a strong odor in the air, burning sulfur, which, again, I heard a man just today on the 700 Club that describes the same smell of sulfur in the air. Like, what a horrible, smell that you would be having to smell for all of your eternity. Having worked in the mines, and on one occasion having seen a fire break out where men were burned, Bill was familiar with the smell of sulfur and the sickening smell of burnt flesh. While Bill was hearing and seeing this smell, this world of lost, he began crying out to God for mercy and for help. Meanwhile, in the hospital, the doctors and nurses were working on reviving Bill, and were successful. In the place he acknowledges as hell, he was suddenly being drawn back upward towards the earth's surface, and everything became black again. Eventually, when he came to himself, he found himself in the hospital room, very weak and mentally overwhelmed by his experience. Shortly after he was stabilized and out of the woods, my grandfather visited Bill and was one of the first persons to hear his life-changing experience of a world that existed beyond the grave. In 1978, I was in Granddad's church interviewing Bill. Just me, Bill, and his son. I asked Bill, "Were you attending church when this happened?" He replied, "I would go to church, but I was not living the life I should. But after this incident, I was so shaken that I said I would serve the Lord and follow Him all the days of my life." Bill certainly was faithful and did follow the Lord until his death. Bill would say, as David did, "He also brought me up out of the horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my steps." And it just goes on to say how later on, that Bill did go to be with the Lord, that he died later on, and someone there, the pastor of the church, had this great vision of him, being there, and it's a wonderful thing. And the stories of people visiting hell are of course depressing, but maybe somebody out there needs to hear that maybe if you are going to church but behind closed doors you're maybe doing some things that are really, really not right, then change those things. Get rid of them, because He's the all-knowing and all-seeing. He knows everything that we do, every thought. And sometimes my thoughts aren't great. Sometimes I have bad thoughts, and I'm thinking, I'll say, "God, please let my thoughts be pure," because, we do. We get angry sometimes, or, have thoughts that maybe we shouldn't have, and just pray every day for God to help you with that. I think what's really awesome is the little children that have had a near-death experience and come back to tell. And my lands, the people that they reach, thousands upon thousands of people that they reach telling their stories of Jesus, holding their hand, of the beauty and the colors of heaven, walking with Jesus, the peace that they felt, how wonderful it was. And I saw an interview with a little boy yesterday who had this bad flu is what his parents thought, and he kept vomiting and just not feeling well. And they ended up, by the time they got him to the hospital, it was his appendix had ruptured, and he had a bad poison that was in his blood. And he flatlined, and 4 years old, he died. They got him in surgery. They got him repaired. They got him, to come back. And he just told of how wonderful heaven was and how Jesus comforted him. And he said that after he had come back, he started, it took a little bit for him to like tell his family what had happened. And one day his mom was figuring bills at the kitchen table, and he said, I saw my sister. And she just said, like, because she didn't know what she was talking about. He does have a little sister. And so finally said, I saw my sister in heaven. Well, they had a little baby girl that had died, and he talked of seeing her, and they never had sat down and talked to her, because this was, years before he was born. And so it was amazing for him to know these things. Another thing, he told his dad, he said, do you know a Pop? And the dad said, yes. And he said, well, I talked to him, and he said he was your grandpa, and it was his dad's grandpa. And he told him of different things that him and the grandpa had done when he was a little boy, and that grandpa had died when his dad was 7 years old, and he had no knowledge of that. It's really amazing to see these people couldn't have known any of those things. But the one thing that all of them describe is Jesus. Another man talked of seeing Jesus, and Jesus asked, what have you done for your fellow man? That's something he's going to ask us all. And we need to really, what have you done? What have you done for people and for your fellow man? And just know this, take your tragedy and turn it into a triumph. Take your victim mentality and make it a victory. Do something, make that your testimony. And don't keep sitting around dwelling on it. Turn it around and help thousands of people. If you can help thousands, millions, go for it. Do it. Don't just keep your misery. Do something about it. And I just, if you'll read his word, you'll find every answer that you need. And I hope that you do that, because I just know this worked for me. And just please ask him in your heart today. I love you all very much in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.